Digital nomads are usually self-employed or run their own company. What would it be like if you could have a normal job with a fixed salary every month and still be able to live and travel all over the world? My guest today works for such an employer with 80 employees, and none of them works in their office. Hi, I'm Chris Piak, and you are listening to the Living Unconventionally podcast. Mart Virkus from Toggle is with us. Hi, Mart.
Hi, Chris.
Mart, when we set up this interview, this conversation for us, I met you in Turkey, in Istanbul.
Yeah.
And now, where do I talk to you?
Yeah. So right now I am in Tallinn, Estonia.
Mm-hmm. And how does your employer feel about that? That you are one day in Istanbul, one day you are in Estonia, one day you are somewhere totally different?
Sure. Well, they made me do it. So they sent me to Istanbul. Last week when I was in Turkey, we were actually there with the other marketing people from the company on a team trip. So it was actually a company trip. So, because a couple of times a year, all our teams get together in some country in the world to spend like a week together, either working on like a special project, but mostly working on team building and, getting some face-to-face time, which is obviously super valuable.
Mm-hmm. Do you always choose a different country where you meet up, or is it always the same?
No, it's different. So it depends a lot on logistics. Like depends on where the people in the teams are from. We have to sort of take into consideration like the traveling times. Make sure we gotta pick a location that doesn't make the journey too long for anybody. That has reasonable travel times and travel costs, obviously. But yeah, we try to also choose different places to keep things sort of interesting.
Mm-hmm. What was the place that you loved the most, where the company sent you to?
Sure, Korea. So we were also with last November, the marketing team was in Korea, again for a team meetup, for a team building trip. So that was, I think for most of us, something completely different, as we mostly, we travel a lot around Europe, North America. But that was the first time, we had a team trip sort of on the Asian side. So that was culturally a great experience. So, really, really exciting.
Yeah. Is there some memory that really stands out to you that you still cherish?
Sure. Yeah, we did as one sort of, I guess, exercise or event we had during our trip. We actually, it's like the national park right next to Seoul, which is basically a bunch of mountains. So we went to basically, we did some light mountain climbing, some, mountain hiking, all of us together. So that was like a nice way to, sort of unwind from work and sort of spend some quality time together with everybody in the team. And it was, physically quite demanding, but fun.
Mm-hmm. Great. If you haven't catched up yet, what is special about this interview, dear listener, here for the Living Unconventionally podcast. As you might have noticed, if you listen carefully to Mart, he said we meet several times per year. We meet all over the world.
Yeah.
Mart, your company doesn't require you to be in a certain place. Is that correct?
Yeah, no. I mean, Toggle is in essence completely remote. It's basically fueled by this idea that it doesn't really matter where you do your work from. Your location has, no effect on what you can do and how well you can work. So yeah, it's just the principle we go by. It's that people do great work from anywhere, and we let them do that. As long as you have a good internet connection, you only need an internet connection. That's about it.
Yeah, this is really awesome. This is for myself and for many of our listeners, obviously. This is like the perfect dream, to have an employer that you work for and who gives you the freedom to work wherever you want.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit your colleagues? Where do they come from and where do they live?
Mm-hmm. So in our marketing teams, we have one person is in Canada. She's from Toronto. We have there's one person from Great Britain, pretty much. So we have a German resident. We have one guy in Serbia. There's one person from Malaysia. So yeah, all over the place.
hmm And do they usually stay in their home country, or do people actually use this opportunity to travel and see the world and work from different places?
They do, yeah. Some more than others, but mostly, yeah. A couple of our team members take good advantage of the opportunity to actually not worry about getting a vacation or taking time off work just to like travel. So if they want to go to like from Canada to some city in North America, they can easily just spend a couple of weeks there. Do work during the day and just enjoy the change of scenery. Otherwise, so they take they use that opportunity quite a lot. So.
hmm And how do me being German, I'm looking for security.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work legally wise? Where am I employed? Say, for example, I live in Germany. My colleague is from India. The third colleague is from the United States. Where are we legally employed? Where do we pay our taxes? How does this work?
Sure, it's a little bit different for the remote companies because you have to. People have like slightly different contexts. They usually pay taxes in their countries of residence. That's how it works in general. Mm-hmm. That's just easier. Yeah.
Yeah. And are they actually employed, or do they work as freelancers for this company?
No, not as freelancers. I think it's. I'm not super familiar with like the legal contractor, like the legal side of this, but I think they're basically employees / contractors. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm just curious how this all works. How long have you been working with Toggle, and what's your experience so far?
So I've been with the company for 4 years. So it's a little bit more than 4 years. So back when I joined, it was actually, I think I joined the company right about when they were about to go remote. Mm-hmm. So when I joined, I think shortly thereafter, the company hired the first non-Estonian employee. So yeah, it was quite interesting. It's like back when I joined, I still went to the office. We didn't have like fixed office time, so we could still work from home, even if most people lived in Tallinn. But we still had the opportunity to work from home most of the time. And it's been an interesting journey seeing, this company go from having an office to now still having an office, but now we have an office that's virtually empty most of the time. So, we have a big office in the middle of Tallinn, but, on an average day, you might see like 2 people there. Mm-hmm. Because at this point, we have close to 80 employees and they're all pretty much globally dispersed.
I think I know the answer to that, but how was the feeling at the beginning of this change? In the beginning, you were a more traditional company. Everyone sits in one place, and then you go more and more first home office, then work completely remotely. I don't know if you know this, but how did your bosses feel about this change? Because obviously they must have agreed to it. And how did your coworkers feel about this?
I think to me, it seems like it was a pretty natural evolution because, it's as far as I know, Toggle's never really had like a very strict rule about 9 to 5 working hours. Like when I joined, I think I tried to go to the office more at first, just to get a feel for the company and get used to working there. But already back then they had this rule that you don't have to go to the office. People would come in let's say morning, and they would leave by lunch and then continue working from home. So we already had like a system and infrastructure in place for handling that sort of non-location dependent workflow, right? Mm-hmm. We were already using Slack, basically a real-time communication tool for handling internal communication. So that was already, the system was in place. So frankly, when we started getting people from outside, remote workers that don't live in Estonia, it wasn't anything shockingly new. It wasn't like shockingly difficult. It just made sense.
I know so many employers who would fear to give up control like that.
Mm-hmm.
From your own experience, how has your work changed? Where did it get more difficult for you to do your job? And where maybe you feel like, oh, I can do a better job now?
Yeah, sure. Many really good questions, actually. Can I start with the control thing?
Sure, go on.
I think that's a very important topic because I think our then CEO, one of the key things he said about going remote was that it was, for him, was like learning to trust people and learning to let go of control over every aspect of people's work was like the most important thing. Because, when people work remotely, and even I think in regular offices, you have to trust people. You can't micromanage people. You have to trust them to make the smaller decisions on their own. They have to be like confident enough to make their, the smaller decisions, of which there is so many during an average workday, on their own. So that's like, it's very much a mindset thing. If you want to do or start practicing remote work, the first thing you have to accept is that, you have to trust people. You have to trust them to do good work. You have to pick the people who you think can make those decisions on their own. So it's a huge, you need that mindset before going into it, for sure. Like micromanagement sort of mentality would not work in a remote environment, I think.
Yeah. And plus, if you can't trust your colleagues, then why did you hire them in the first place?
Sure. Yeah. Hiring is a big, when we hire people, one of the chief things we test, like during, everybody does like a week-long test week that's paid for, where they work on some project together with the team. And we do this to see, like, how does this person sort of handle this remote working environment,
You do the test week, you also do remotely already.
Yes, of course, absolutely. It's very important that we do, because that gives us an idea of like how that person behaves and communicates when they don't have that face-to-face access, right? When they don't have those face-to-face interaction moments. Because it's you can't just disappear from Slack for a week and work in isolation. You have to be mindful of like how your communication comes across. You have to be quite good at writing down your questions in a way that they make sense to people, without using words to explain what you're trying to say. All of those things are super important, and it's all of that. This is what we keep an eye on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You also asked about the the difficulties and the benefits. It's also a good question because there's definitely many benefits. To me, outweighs any negatives. Like from a personal perspective, I would say I just cherish the opportunity to not have to worry about catching the bus to be at work at a specific time. I can, if I want to do something, I can start working on it in the morning. I can easily take like a 2-3 hour break in the middle of the day if I'm feeling exhausted, because I know that, I can, for example, make up for that time later in the evening, right? Imagine if I was stuck in like 9 to 5 office and, I lose motivation for 3 hours in the office, I would feel pretty bad about, going to home after 5 and having to do catch-up work, right? Mm-hmm. So, I can sort of work when I'm feeling the most productive. That's a big thing.
Yeah, and everybody also has a different rhythm when they are most productive.
Yes.
Many programmers, for example, they like to work in the nighttime, then they feel most active.
Sure.
I come from radio originally, so at 6 o'clock, I'm bright awake. I have my best creative times and can work. And if you have this freedom to do this, then it's good for the employer as well.
Absolutely. And it's just more humane as well. That's the one thing I don't like about office work is like, I do get those, after lunch, I get that motivation slump where I'm just not sort of that focused and, I'd rather do something else. But it's good that, I can do something else with that time.
Do you know this movie Office Space? It's a few years old already.
Yeah, I remember that. That's a good one.
Yeah, there's this great scene when they hire outside consultants to decide whom they should fire.
Yeah.
And these two consultants, they hire the main character, and he's basically telling them what he's doing all day long, which is nothing. Mm-hmm. He just finds different ways to pretend that he's productive at his little office desk, when in reality he's just slacking it and doing nothing at all. So because he can't work
That's a very good point, because one sort of criticism I've heard about remote work, or when people sort of question the validity of it, they say that, so if you have remote workers, how do you know people are being productive? But I mean, the counter argument is, I think you can easily slack off at an office without anybody noticing, very successfully. I think in that sense, the remote sort of setup changes nothing. I could easily waste time at an office and pretend like I'm working if I wanted to do that.
Absolutely, and many people do, because they feel forced to work in a way that's not productive for them.
Yeah, sure.
No, if you force people to fit into a form that doesn't fit to them, then they will never bring their best results. Obviously, that's one of the benefits of working remotely. For you personally, did you also experience negatives that you feel like, okay, that's something that I could do without?
Sure. Definitely. I guess you have to be, there's a lot of things you have to be, I guess, careful with. I guess even small things like having a dedicated space for working and being mindful of where you work if you don't have an office, right? Like if you wake up in the morning and there's all your, and this happens, I can be a messy person. So sometimes, I have in my living room, there's cups and, trash on one desk. You go to the kitchen, there's dirty dishes there. That's not a good environment to start working in. You need a clean, organized space that doesn't have that clutter or those distractions. You don't want to sort of feel like you have to start doing dishes when you also have important work stuff to do. Sort of figuring out that space, or even going to a cafe or a co-working space, sort of, separating that personal space from the workspace is hugely important. Like a cluttered room can really drag down productivity, I would say. I guess also thinking about working times, like when are you available and when not? Because also one of the risks is that if you don't have those office hours, it's easy to either work, from morning to late in the evening, not drawing line between your personal life and work life. That's always a risk. Also a risk is procrastinating for too long because, you don't have a time where you need to be somewhere. So that's something to be just mindful of, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us your best tips for both of these scenarios? First of all, to avoid to constantly work and forget to have a private life, and also how to avoid procrastination.
Yeah, easy solution. Toggle, the company I work for, it's a time tracking tool. So that's something that I've used personally to see, if I have my timer running, I know that's work time. If it's been running without any projects for too long, that means I'm probably doing too many things. It also gives you an idea of how long you've been working, what the actual count of hours comes down to. So yeah, I guess time tracking tools like Toggle, I mean, that's going to be important, I guess, for remote companies, because, in the absence of that 9 to 5 framework, that gives you that idea of how long am I actually doing stuff when I don't have that 9 to 5 framework, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be one thing. But also a dedicated space and a routine. You have to have some routine of okay, I know I'm going to wake up at 8. Let's say I start working at 9. You might have a rule for yourself, I'll stop working at this hour and I'll pick up on stuff then and then. Having a good to-do list is also important. And having that dedicated workspace that doesn't have distractions like dirty dishes or a video game console.
Mm-hmm. I don't know the product that your company is offering, this software as a service, I assume, Toggle.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know much about it, but I could assume that the fact that you're time tracking,
mm-hmm.
that it helps you also personally to figure out what part of your work is actually the most productive and where you waste waste time that actually doesn't get any results done. Do you experience this in your life?
Yeah, with time tracking in specifically, you mean?
Yeah. For example, yeah. That working remotely. My real question really is that working remotely can help you focus on the things that actually get you results, because you don't have to pretend to be busy anymore.
Exactly. One of actually the early things I figured out, working remotely and using Toggle is that I don't work 8 hours. Right, it's like we have this weird standard of you have to work for 8 hours a day. That's it's the standard we've had since the late industrial era. It's this ridiculous concept of work time, that work time happens for 8 hours a day. It doesn't have any basis in reality. It's just basically labor unions and industrialists at one point came together and they compromised on how long you can exploit your workers. And the compromise was 8 hours. And yeah, what I found was I don't need 8 hours or to work 8 hours necessarily to be productive. I could, work on some projects. Some days I would record like maybe 3 hours of actually meaningful work. Plus I would separately track work that was not like deliberate and meaningful, but like, small tasks like checking your emails or responding to questions, like distractions. And, I might also have like, maybe some days I would have like 3 hours of work on a specific project, but, the project would, work out great or, it would actually bring results. But, it's for me, it was like eye-opening that, the things, sometimes, the things that they don't need as much time as you think they do. So that was like quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful. And I must say, I have been an employer myself for many, many years. And nowadays I also only work remotely. I love my colleagues. I don't want ever to see them because, life is about more than just to work from 9 till 5. And there's so many parts of the world that you can explore if you have the freedom to move around.
Yeah.
Mart, thank you so much for this interview, and thank you so much that you have been so spontaneous also, because I rushed you a little bit.
Sure, why not? I mean, yeah.
Toggle also offers jobs right now, I see on your website. If I got inspired by your story, if I think, this would be awesome and I have something that I can contribute to your company, where should I go?
So you should go to jobs.toggle.com. That's where we keep all our active job openings. And obviously, we post them to our Facebook as well. So we have a Facebook page, obviously called Toggle, and that's where we let people know of like if something is coming up. So yeah, check them out. There's the hiring process is actually quite unique. The way the hiring works, just to like give you an expectation of what would happen, or to the listeners an expectation of what would happen, is we use tests for hiring. So usually when you see a Toggle job ad, you have to take like a 10-15 minute test. And that automatically sort of scores your answers. And then based on that, we move on to like the interview rounds and the test weeks.
Yeah, I see, for example, right now you're looking for, among other jobs, for an UI, UX designer. So people who optimize the performance of the website, the way how you interact with the website.
Yeah.
So I would go to the website and what is it? Is a multiple choice test, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's so the tests are set up differently, a little bit also depending on the position. There's some single choice answers, there's some multiple choice answers. We also use some pre-text answers where you have to like type something. These obviously we don't have machine learning or anything that clever. The pre-text stuff we evaluate sort of manually. Because some things you can't test, with a multiple choice thing, right? Sometimes you also want to sort of read what the person has to say. So yeah, the tests are a little bit different. I think with the technical, like development related jobs, there's more, I guess, single choice or multiple choice questions because, things are more technical.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mart Virkers from Toggle joined us today to talk about his wonderful company where you can work completely remotely all around the world. If you want to check them out, go to toggle.com. That's TOGGL.com. I will also link to your website here in the description of the podcast. My name is Chris Piak. I'm the host of the Living Unconventionally podcast. If you haven't, please sign up so that you hear us again next Monday with a new world traveler, adventure seeker who chases her or his passion around the world. We hear each other next Monday again.